I remember a time in my life when I was holding on to something that had long run its course. It was a relationship that, at one point, had been everything to me. It had been my anchor, my safe place, my joy. But as the years went by, that joy turned into something heavier, something that felt more like an obligation than a connection. Deep down, I knew it was over. I knew it wasn't serving either of us anymore. But the thought of letting go felt impossible. We do this, don't we? We convince ourselves that holding on is the brave thing, the noble thing. We think if we just try a little harder, give a little more, it will get better. And so I stayed. I stayed because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. Afraid of the unknown. Afraid of the pain. Afraid of failing. Even though the truth was staring me right in the face, it was already broken. One day I was sitting alone in the quiet of my home. It was one of those moments when life forces you to pause, to reflect. I remember looking out the window, watching the wind push through the trees, shaking the last few leaves off their branches. And something about that struck me, how natural it was for the trees to let go. They didn't cling to those leaves even though they had once been full of life. They didn't resist the wind even though it left them bare. They just let it happen. I thought to myself, why can't I do that? Why am I so afraid to let this end? And then it hit me, I was clinging to the past because I didn't trust the future. I didn't trust myself to stand alone. That realization didn't make the decision any easier, but it did make it clearer. The day I decided to end that relationship was one of the hardest days of my life. It wasn't dramatic, there was no shouting, no grand gestures. Just two people sitting across from each other, acknowledging the truth. And it hurt. Oh, how it hurt. I cried until I didn't think I had any tears left. I questioned myself 1,000 times. Had I done enough? Had I given up too soon? Would I regret this? The days and weeks that followed were heavy. Grief is like that. It sneaks up on you when you least expect it. I'd hear a song or see a picture or catch a familiar scent, and it would all come flooding back, the love, the laughter, the dreams we'd shared. And in those moments, the pain felt unbearable, but something else was happening too, something quieter. Amid the hurt, there was a sense of relief, a tiny seed of hope. You see, when you let something end, you create space for healing, for growth, for something new. At first, that space feels empty, even lonely, but over time, it starts to fill. For me, it filled with self-discovery. I started to see myself more clearly, not as half of a broken partnership, but as a whole person. I found strength I didn't know I had, and I learned to trust myself in ways I never had before. Letting go wasn't easy. In fact, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But it taught me something invaluable. Endings are not failures. They are necessary. They are how we grow, how we evolve, how we step into the next chapter of our lives. So if you find yourself holding on to something that no longer serves you, a relationship, a dream, an idea of who you're supposed to be, know this: it's okay to let it end. It's okay to let it hurt. And when you do, you'll find that you are stronger, braver, and more capable than you ever imagined. We've all been there, haven't we? At some point in our lives, every one of us has found ourselves standing at a crossroads, clutching tightly to something that we know deep in our hearts we need to release. Maybe it was a relationship that no longer brought joy, but instead left us feeling drained. Maybe it was a job that once made us feel alive, but now feels like a cage. Or perhaps it was a dream, something we once poured our heart and soul into, only to find that it no longer fits the person we've become. And yet, even when we know it's time to move on, we hesitate. We wrestle with the questions, the fears, the doubts. What if I never find something better? What if I regret this? What if I'm making a mistake? These thoughts keep us stuck, keep us clinging to the familiar, even when the familiar is no longer serving us. It's such a profoundly human experience, isn't it, to fear the unknown, to resist change? We are creatures of habit, after all. We find comfort in what we know, even when that comfort starts to feel uncomfortable. And when it comes to endings, whether it's the end of a relationship, a job, a chapter in life, it's not just the fear of change that holds us back. It's also the fear of loss. Loss is something we all know too well. It's universal. Whether it's the loss of a loved one, a friendship, or even a version of ourselves that leaves a mark, And that mark stays with us, shaping the way we navigate future endings. Maybe we hold on longer than we should because we don't want to feel that kind of pain again. Or maybe we let go too quickly before we've even had a chance to fully understand what's happening because the idea of facing the hurt is just too much. But here's the thing, holding on doesn't stop the inevitable. Time keeps moving, life keeps changing, and eventually we have to reckon with what's real. The truth is, we all go through seasons of life. Some are filled with joy and growth, while others bring challenges and endings. And just like the seasons in nature, each one has a purpose. Winter might feel cold and barren, but it's also a time of rest and renewal, preparing the ground for spring. Think about that for a moment. How many times in your life have you faced an ending, only to realize later that it was the beginning of something better? Maybe it didn't feel like it at the time. Maybe in the moment it felt like the world was crashing down around you. But now looking back, you can see how that ending cleared the way for growth, for healing, for something new. We all carry these stories, don't we? Stories of heartbreak, of loss, of starting over. And while each story is unique, the emotions are the same. The fear, the sadness, the uncertainty, they connect us. They remind us that we're not alone in this. And yet, so often we try to go through it alone. We put on a brave face, tell ourselves to tough it out, to keep it together. But the truth is, there's strength in vulnerability. There's power in admitting this is hard. Because when we do, we open the door for connection. And in that connection, we find comfort, support, and the courage to move forward. So if you're in that place right now, if you're holding on to something that you know it's time to let go of, know this: you are not alone. You are not the first person to feel this way, and you won't be the last. And just as others have made it through, so will you. Because endings, as painful as they can be, are also a part of life. They're how we grow, how we learn, how we become who we're meant to be. And maybe, just maybe, in sharing our stories and acknowledging our shared experiences, we can remind each other that there's beauty in the process. That even in the midst of the hurt, there's hope. That every ending carries within it the seeds of a new beginning. And that, my friends, is something worth holding on to. There comes a moment in every life where we are faced with the undeniable truth something has run its course. A relationship, a job, a belief, a way of living it no longer serves us, no longer aligns with who we are or who we are becoming. But knowing this and acting on it are two entirely different things. Letting something end requires courage, and courage often feels like the last thing we have when faced with the finality of an ending. It's human nature to resist endings. We are wired to hold on, to preserve what is familiar and safe, even when that safety is an illusion. We replay moments in our minds, searching for ways we might fix things, bring them back to the way they were. We bargain with ourselves, telling ourselves that if we just try harder, stay a little longer, or ignore the signs, things will get better. But deep down, we know the truth: endings are inevitable. Without endings, there can be no beginnings. Think about that. If we refuse to let something end, we're not just holding on to what was, we're preventing what could be. When we cling to a chapter that is meant to close, we keep ourselves stuck in a loop, unable to move forward. In life, as beautiful and complex as it is, doesn't wait for us to catch up. It keeps moving, urging us to grow, evolve, and step into the unknown. Closure isn't just about saying goodbye, it's about acknowledging the truth. It's about honoring what was, accepting what is, and making space for what could be. Sometimes we think of closure as a neat, tidy process, a moment where everything clicks into place and we feel ready to move on. But closure is rarely that simple. It's messy, it's emotional. It often comes in waves, hitting us when we least expect it. And yet, closure is necessary. It's the act of giving ourselves permission to let go. To stop replaying the past, stop wondering what might have been, and instead focus on what is right in front of us. It's not about erasing the memories or pretending the experience didn't matter. On the contrary, it's about embracing the lessons, the growth, and the transformation that came from it. Letting it end is an act of self-respect. It's saying, I deserve to live a life that aligns with my truth. It's acknowledging that staying in a place of stagnation, whether it's a relationship, a job, or even an outdated version of yourself, doesn't honor the person you are meant to become. Endings are not failures. They are stepping stones to something greater. Think about a book. Every great story has chapters. Some are filled with joy and triumph, while others are marked by struggle and loss. But each chapter, no matter how beautiful or painful, has a beginning and an end. If we refuse to turn the page, we rob ourselves of the rest of the story. Life is no different. By letting something end, we allow the next chapter to unfold. Of course, endings are not without pain. They bring with them a sense of loss, uncertainty, and sometimes even regret. But pain is not the enemy. Pain is part of the process. It's a sign that something mattered, that it held meaning. And while the pain of an ending can feel overwhelming, it's also what makes space for healing, growth, and renewal. So if you're standing at the edge of an ending, unsure of whether you can take that final step, remember these endings are not the end of you. They are a doorway to your next beginning. Let it end. Trust that the world has something new waiting for you. And know that in letting go, you are not losing, you are choosing to honor yourself, your journey, and the limitless possibilities ahead. Pain is something we often try to avoid. We numb it, distract ourselves, push it down, or pretend it's not there. We tell ourselves to stay strong, to move on quickly, to not let it break us. But in doing so, we deny ourselves one of the most important parts of the healing process, feeling the hurt. Pain, as uncomfortable and heavy as it is, has a purpose. It's there to teach us, to guide us, and to remind us of what truly matters. And if we're brave enough to face it, we can find power in honoring our pain instead of running from it. When something ends a relationship, a dream, a chapter of our lives, it leaves a void. That void can feel vast and consuming, like a hollow ache that doesn't seem to go away. We feel it in our chest, our stomach, our very bones. It's a heaviness that whispers to us in the quiet moments, reminding us of what we've lost. And let's be honest, that hurts. It hurts deeply. But pain, as much as we want to escape it, is not the enemy. The pain is a part of being human. It's a sign that we've loved, that we've cared, that something mattered enough to leave a mark. In our culture, we're often told to be strong, to get over it or move on, but strength doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from acknowledging it, allowing yourself to feel it fully, and trusting that it won't destroy you. Honoring your pain means giving yourself the space to grieve. It means sitting with the sadness, the anger, the confusion, and letting those emotions move through you. Because here's the truth, what we resist persists. The more we try to ignore or suppress our pain, the more it lingers, showing up in ways we don't expect through anxiety, frustration, or a sense of emptiness that we can't quite explain. But when we allow ourselves to feel the pain, we give it permission to do its work. Pain is a messenger. It tells us where we've been hurt, what we've lost, and where we might need to grow. It forces us to confront the truth, even when that truth is hard to face. And in that confrontation, there's an opportunity for transformation. Think about the last time you truly let yourself cry. Not a quick tear that you wiped away, but a deep, soul-shaking cry, the kind that leaves you exhausted and raw. In those moments, there's something almost sacred happening. Your body is releasing the weight of what it's been holding. Your heart is making space for something new. That's what honoring your pain looks like, giving yourself the freedom to feel, to release, and to heal. The pain also connects us. It's one of the few experiences that every human being shares. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in our pain, we open the door to empathy and understanding. How often have you found comfort in someone else's story simply because they knew what it felt like to hurt? By honoring our pain, we give ourselves permission to be real. And in that realness, we find connection not only with others, but with ourselves. It's important to remember that honoring your pain doesn't mean wallowing in it or letting it define you. It's not about staying stuck in the hurt, but about moving through it. Think of it like walking through a storm. The only way out is through. If you try to avoid the storm, it will follow you. But if you face it head on, you'll eventually come out the other side, stronger and clearer than before. So let it hurt. Let yourself feel the depth of your emotions without judgment or shame. Give yourself the grace to cry, to mourn, to be vulnerable. Trust that this pain, as overwhelming as it may feel, is not permanent. It's a chapter in your story, not the whole book. And when you honor your pain, you honor the love, the effort, and the dreams that came before it. That's not weakness, that's strength. Healing is not a passive process, it's an active choice we make every single day. When something in our lives comes to an end, whether it's a relationship, a dream, or even a version of ourselves, it leaves a wound. And that wound demands attention. Healing doesn't happen by accident or by simply waiting for time to do its work. It happens when we consciously decide to face the hurt, to tend to it with care, and to choose growth over bitterness. It's tempting to let bitterness take root after a painful ending. Anger, blame, and resentment can feel like armor protecting us from further hurt. We might replay the moments that broke us, pointing to everything and everyone that went wrong. It's human to do this, to want to make sense of the pain by assigning blame. But bitterness, while it might feel justified, doesn't protect us, it traps us. It keeps us stuck in the past, tethered to the very thing we need to move on from. Healing, on the other hand, is a choice to let go of that weight. It's not about pretending the hurt didn't happen or excusing the actions that caused it. Healing is about reclaiming your power, refusing to let pain dictate your future, and choosing to focus on what comes next rather than what's behind you. The process of healing is not linear. Some days you'll feel strong and optimistic, ready to take on the world. Other days, the weight of the past will feel unbearable, and the progress you thought you'd made will seem to disappear. That's okay. Healing isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. It's about showing up for yourself, even on the days when it feels impossible. One of the most profound parts of healing is discovering the lessons within the pain. Every ending, no matter how difficult, carries wisdom if we're willing to look for it. Perhaps you've learned something about your boundaries, your values, or your capacity for resilience. Maybe the ending has pushed you to grow in ways you never thought possible. Healing is not just about moving on, it's about moving forward with a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. Growth often requires vulnerability. It means being honest about what you need, whether that's therapy, time, or the support of loved ones. It means allowing yourself to feel joy again, even when it feels undeserved. And it means forgiving, not necessarily forgetting, but choosing to release the hold that anger and resentment have on your heart. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to others, it's a gift you give to yourself. Healing is the ultimate act of self-love. It's a declaration that you are worth the effort it takes to rebuild, to grow, and to thrive. When you choose healing over bitterness, you create space for joy, for connection, and for a future that isn't defined by the pain of your past. It's not an easy choice, but it's one that leads to freedom. Healing is your birthright, claim it. Letting go is one of the hardest yet most liberating things we can do. It's not just about walking away from something or someone, it's about releasing the emotional grip that the past has on us. Letting go means making a conscious choice to stop carrying the weight of what no longer serves us. It's about reclaiming the power we've given to our pain, our regrets, and our fears, and taking that energy back to invest in our future. When something ends, a relationship, a dream, or even a version of ourselves, it's natural to want to hold on. We cling to what's familiar because it feels safe, even if it's no longer good for us. We replay moments in our heads, wondering what we could have done differently. We tell ourselves stories about how things should have been. And in doing so, we bind ourselves to a version of the past that we can't change. But here's the truth: holding on doesn't change what happened. It doesn't undo the pain, the mistakes, or the loss. What it does is keep us tethered to a story that no longer has a place in our lives. The more we hold on, the more we deny ourselves the freedom to move forward. And that freedom, the ability to step into the present and create a future, is where our true power lies. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending that the hurt didn't happen or that the love or effort you gave didn't matter. Letting go is about accepting what is. It's about looking at the situation, the person, or the experience and saying, I honor what this was and I release what it no longer needs to be. It's an act of compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. One of the hardest parts of letting go is facing the fear that comes with it. What if we don't find something better? What if we make the same mistakes again? What if we lose something else? These fears are valid, but they are also part of the process. Letting go is an act of trust in ourselves, trust in the journey, and trust in the idea that life has more to offer us than what we've left behind. When you let go, you create space. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents a regret, a grudge, or an attachment to something that's over. The longer you carry it, the heavier it feels. But when you start taking those stones out, one by one, you begin to feel lighter. That's what letting go does. It frees you to live more fully, to experience joy, and to open yourself up to new possibilities. Letting go is also a way of reclaiming your narrative. Often when we hold on to the past, we allow it to define us. We see ourselves through the lens of what happened, our failures, our heartbreaks, our disappointments. But you are not your past. You are not the sum of your losses or your mistakes. You are the person who survived them, who learned from them, and who has the strength to move forward. Reclaiming your power means choosing to live in the present. It means refusing to let the past dictate your worth or your future. It's about saying, this happened, and it hurt, but it doesn't get to control me anymore. When you let go, you step back into your own story as the author, not just a character reacting to what's already been written. Letting go is a process, not a single moment. Some days it will feel easy, and other days it will feel impossible. That's okay. What matters is that you keep choosing to release what weighs you down. Each small step, each decision to let go a little more brings you closer to freedom. So let it go. Not because it's easy, but because you deserve the peace, the joy, and the possibility that comes with it. Reclaim your power and step boldly into the life waiting for you. You are stronger than your past, braver than your fears, and more capable than you realize. Letting go is not the end, it's the beginning of everything. Transformation often feels elusive when we're in the midst of pain or loss. In those moments, we can't imagine ever feeling whole again. The weight of what we've been through seems to linger in every corner of our being. But transformation doesn't come all at once, it doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand declarations. Instead, it unfolds quietly like a sunrise, subtle at first, and then breathtakingly radiant. What's remarkable is that the transformation that follows an ending, once you've let yourself hurt, heal, and let go, is often more profound than you ever thought possible. When we emerge from the process of letting go, we aren't the same people who first entered it. We've shed layers of pain, of regret, of who we thought we had to be. And in their place, we find clarity, strength, and a deeper connection to our true selves. Transformation is about becoming not someone else, but more fully ourselves. It's a process of rediscovery, of meeting parts of ourselves that were buried beneath fear, attachment, or self-doubt. One of the first signs of transformation is a shift in perspective. Where we once saw endings as failures or losses, we begin to see them as opportunities. The pain that once felt insurmountable becomes a lesson, a teacher that shaped us in ways we couldn't see at the time. We start to understand that every experience, no matter how difficult, has its purpose. It might have taught us resilience, revealed our inner strength, or guided us toward a new path. Transformation comes when we stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what can I learn from this? As we transform, we also become more open to possibility. Letting go of the past creates space not just in our lives, but in our minds and hearts. Suddenly, we begin to notice opportunities that were always there but were hidden by the weight of what we were holding on to. We feel lighter, freer, and more capable of embracing the new. It's as if life, seeing that we're ready, starts to offer us gifts, connections, experiences, and paths that align with the person we're becoming. Another hallmark of transformation is the ability to hold both the joy and the pain of life. We no longer see happiness as the absence of struggle or success as the avoidance of failure. Instead, we recognize that both can coexist. This duality allows us to live more fully, to savor the beauty of life while acknowledging its imperfections. Transformation teaches us that we are strong enough to hold the complexity of it all, the joy, the grief, the hope, and the uncertainty. Perhaps the most beautiful part of transformation is how it impacts our relationships with others, with the world, and with ourselves. We become more compassionate, not just because we've known pain, but because we've allowed it to shape us into someone more understanding, more empathetic. We start to see others not as adversaries or strangers, but as fellow travelers on this journey of life. And most importantly, we begin to treat ourselves with the kindness and respect we deserve. Transformation is also deeply empowering. After facing our pain, healing from it, and choosing to let go, we realize just how capable we are. We no longer fear the unknown as we once did because we've seen our own ability to navigate it. We start to trust ourselves not just to survive, but to thrive. This self-trust is the foundation for everything else we'll build in our lives. In the end, transformation isn't about erasing the past or forgetting the pain. It's about integrating it. It's about taking the broken pieces of our story and weaving them into something new and beautiful. The scars remain, but they no longer define us. Instead, they become reminders of where we've been and how far we've come. If you're in the midst of an ending, unsure if you'll ever feel whole again, know this transformation is waiting for you. It won't happen overnight, and it won't always be easy. But as you move through the process, letting it end, letting it hurt, letting it heal, and letting it go, you'll find yourself stepping into a version of you that is wiser, stronger, and more radiant than before. That's the power of transformation. It's not just about surviving, it's about rising. Life at its core is a continuous cycle of beginnings and endings. It's a rhythm as natural as the tides, as predictable as the changing seasons. And yet we often resist this flow, holding on to what was or fearing what might come next. But here's the truth: the beauty of life lies in its impermanence, its ability to evolve, and the way it calls us to grow through every phase. To truly live, we must embrace this cycle, the endings, the pain, the healing, and the transformation, and step into it with courage and intention. The cycle of life doesn't wait for us to be ready. Change happens whether we embrace it or not. Relationships shift, opportunities arise and fade, and we ourselves are constantly in flux. Resisting this cycle doesn't stop it, it only causes more pain. But when we choose to embrace it, to accept the natural ebb and flow of life, we find peace. We learn to trust that every ending is also a beginning, every loss holds the seed of something new, and every moment, whether joyful or painful, is an essential part of our journey. This cycle invites us to be present, to fully engage with each phase as it comes. When something ends, let it end. Resist the urge to cling to what was, and instead honor it for what it taught you. When it hurts, let it hurt. Allow yourself to feel the depth of your emotions, knowing that they are part of the process. When it's time to heal, choose to lean into growth rather than bitterness. Tend to your wounds with care and compassion, and trust that healing will come, even if it's slower than you'd like. And when it's time to let go, release what no longer serves you with grace, making space for what's next. Embracing this cycle requires faith, not just in the process, but in yourself. Faith that you are strong enough to face the pain, resilient enough to heal, and brave enough to let go. Faith that even when the future feels uncertain, it holds possibilities greater than you can imagine. And faith that life, in all its messiness and unpredictability, is guiding you toward growth and fulfillment. But faith alone is not enough, it also requires action. Transformation doesn't happen by standing still. It happens when we step forward, even when we're afraid. It happens when we make choices that align with our truth, even when they're difficult. And it happens when we show up for ourselves day after day, trusting that each small step is bringing us closer to the life we're meant to live. As you embrace the cycle, remember that you are not alone. Every human being experiences endings, pain, healing, and transformation. It's part of what connects us. When you feel overwhelmed, reach out to friends, family, or even strangers who've walked similar paths. Share your story and listen to theirs. In doing so, you'll find strength and solace in the shared humanity of this journey. Let this be your call to action. Embrace the cycle of life, not as something to fear, but as something to celebrate. Celebrate the growth that comes with each ending, the wisdom that comes from pain, and the freedom that comes from letting go. Celebrate the infinite capacity you have to heal, to transform, and to begin again. And remember, this cycle is not linear. You may revisit the same phases multiple times, sometimes in ways that feel overwhelming. That's okay. Growth is not a straight path, it's a spiral, each turn bringing you closer to your true self. Trust that every step you take, no matter how small, is part of your evolution. So here's the invitation: embrace the cycle. Say yes to the endings, even when they hurt. Say yes to the healing, even when it's hard. Say yes to the letting go, even when it feels impossible. And say yes to the transformation waiting on the other side. Because this is life, not just surviving but thriving, not just existing but evolving. You are capable of embracing it all, and in doing so, you will find your strength, your purpose, and your power. Take a deep breath and step into the cycle. It's yours to live.